to our first 2026 Sobremesa Chat. You might notice that our format is a little bit different. So moving forward, we're going to release our chats. They'll be pre-recorded and then uploaded to Instagram. We've decided to do this mainly because it provides us a little bit more flexibility in how we share things with y'all. But we are always still open for questions. We'll be uploading a question box before every week's episode so that you can ask questions and we'll share. And so that will start rolling out in February. But if you're new here, my name is Hilda McClure. I am the COO of Cannenta Center and a board member of Cannenta Foundation. And I'm joined by the lovely Elizabeth Palafox, who is our clinician lead in San Antonio. And I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Palafox. I am the lead clinician here in San Antonio. Um, yeah, I'm so excited to get back into the Sobremesa Chats, and we're going over a lot of fun topics this year. So I'm excited.
Yes, yes. I'm so excited about today's conversation. Today we're going to be talking about what therapy is and talking about maybe some of the myths that we encounter, um, or even just like some of the things that people don't quite understand about therapy. So I'm really, really, really pumped. So
Yeah.
I want to start us out with this question, if it's okay, Elizabeth. Where did you first encounter therapy? Like, how did you
Mm.
find out about it? How did we end up here?
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good question. So I would say that I grew up, I don't think, unlike a lot of people, with this idea that therapy was just kind of worst case scenario, or if there was a crisis situation, you go talk to, el psicólogo, or you go get medication. I thought that was like together, like you do both therapy and medication. And then growing up, I also saw so I have a younger brother who would require, like play therapy and those sort of things. So in my head it was just kind of either for kids or if it was for something really serious.
Hmm.
The rest of us just kind of had to, I guess in my mind was like you just kind of like deal with it and you move
Yes,
on.
suck it up.
But then in college, in my undergrad, is when I personally sought out therapy for the first time. Being a first gen in a predominantly white, institution, and just the pressure to like perform, all of that naturally leads to some burnout. And so I sought out counseling through the student center. And my luck was that my clinician was Latino, and so that was just a different experience. It was not what I expected it to be. Just how conversational it was too, where I had a lot of worry and anxiety and shame around going, but then being there, it just felt like, hey, this is pretty helpful and it's not as scary as I thought it was going to be. So it was through that I was introduced to how it actually works.
Yeah.
And then I actually ended up switching my major. Just like a quick side note, I was biochemistry. I switched over to sociology, which then led me to social work and the clinical side of social work. So yeah, from there, that's where I would say my personal experience with like understanding what it is, started then.
That's awesome. That's so good. Also, I did not know that about you about being a
Yeah.
biochemist. But you know what? I could totally see it. I think you're so good at what you do as a therapist, but I could like totally see it with a little white lab
Well,
coat.
yeah, I was like, oh, Latinos in STEM,
That's right.
you have to represent. But at the same time, I was like, but do I want to be doing
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
But yeah, what about you? How did you
Um,
get
I don't kind of I think like that my upbringing was kind of similar that like you go to the psicólogo if you're crazy, or if you need like some kind of educational assessment, then you would go for that. And then when I was in undergrad, I really have always enjoyed talking to people. and getting to know people. And so I actually started as a psychology undergrad and loved all my psychology classes. My intro to psych professor was Dr. Rosenbaum, and I just like fell in love. However, an undergrad in psychology doesn't get you a lot of jobs. And so I ended up switching to education, really felt like that was the right move. And then when I was actually teaching my first year, I realized that teaching wasn't for me in that setting. And we actually had an LPC at campus on campus, not like a school counselor. With respect to all my school counselors, the role just looks a little bit different. Um, and so I was like, oh, I wouldn't be doing what she's doing. She's like sitting with the kids and having groups with the kids, not really understanding the full extent of that. But that's how I got into the field. And so during that time, my first interaction with a therapist was actually in graduate school. I was having really severe anxiety, and so my church paid for me to go see a therapist. And so that was like my first very real exposure to therapy outside of my schooling. And then I um, it was nouthetic counseling, it's what it's called. And so it's like when straight only from the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it wasn't a long-term thing. I just stayed there because that's where they were
Yeah.
paying for it. And then took me a couple tries, but then I landed on my current therapist. Shout out to Lindsay, who I've been with for a long time, at least
No.
since before I was married. So at least 9 or 10 years now.
Wow.
Hmm. Yeah,
That's what I love about therapy too, because it could be a long-term relationship
yeah,
too. And
yeah,
that's amazing to
yeah,
for her, I'm sure too, to have seen you through all your seasons.
yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. I just I had session with her last week and there was like something that had happened in my personal life and I was like, Lindsay, I have to tell you because of all the people you understand the gravity of the situation. She did. And she did. Yeah. She's like basically my ride or die. Like if
Aw.
I write anything, if I like, have to do gratitude, she's always on the list because so
Aw.
much of my time with her has been so deeply impactful and helping shape me and
I
how I show
love
up.
that.
Mhm.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So I'll see her next week. I still see her regularly. We have seasons that we go down in sessions, maybe once a month as a checkup. And then there's other seasons where we go up to like every 2 weeks is usually my
Mhm.
a good place for me. If
Mhm.
I really need it, we'll do weekly, but every 2 weeks has been the norm.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Shout out to her then.
Yeah. Yeah, she's legit. She's legit. Well, let's kind of transition. Sorry, I keep losing my notes. So if you guys see me look away, it's because I keep losing my notes. Um, can you kick us off with what therapy is, and then we can start talking about like the actual like practicality of it.
Yeah, so therapy is a practice, right, where you're going in um, with a sort of like a presenting problem. Something has come up, and there may be other smaller things associated with that presenting problem or issue, but it's usually like one big thing, whether it's a life transition, whether it is um an ongoing feeling you may have be having like anxiety or depression. Maybe there is a decision you have to make, but it's really unclear what that decision should be. So there's usually one big thing. You go in and you work with a trained professional, and you guys come up with a plan of how you are going to either resolve or address that issue that's coming up for you. Um, Typically, so the way that I was kind of like trained when it comes to solving that problem, and I know we'll get into the details a little bit later, but we want to increase something and decrease something. So we want to increase maybe something like coping skills or self-esteem or healthy relationships, healthy communication, and we want to decrease maybe nightmares. We want to decrease restlessness, So those are the two things typically. And the idea is it could be short term, maybe a couple of weeks, or it could be longer term. Like, Hilda gave that example of it is that space where as you're moving through life, you're gonna have problems come up throughout your life. It's not just that one time, and you can have a long-term therapist to guide you through that as well. And then at times it's just for you, but we also have couples counseling, and whether it's like premarital or it's after 20 years of marriage, or if you're in the middle, there's parenting, and then there's family, um, and that could be a combination of I've had adult family members come in together. We've had parent children, so it's pretty diverse, but the central part is there's a presenting issue, there is a plan to address it together, and then there are follow-ups to see how you're doing with that.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And the presenting problem really can be anything from super severe, what we call SMI, serious mental illness, to, hey, I started a new job. I'm feeling really stressed out and I can't manage my stress, to kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say that lower end, but
A
just
wide
like,
range.
yeah, just a wide range. And then some people really just want to come in to chat, right? Like just to have a relationship where they can um, really desahogarse, right?
Hmm.
And that can be okay too. So
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, and I think that in our community, I see that a lot more commonly where I have a few clients who hit their what we call their therapeutic goals. So right, we kind of address. We always want to be making progress forward, um, mainly because right, it can be a little complicated because it's still service and you still pay, and so we want to make sure that we're being ethically sound. So there always needs to be kind of a step, like a progress forward. But I do see that with some of my Latino clients, Latinx clients, is that the relationship becomes very important,
Hmm.
even outside of the presenting problem. And
Hmm.
so if they can't afford it, they might continue to come to just like chat about day to day things that come up, not so much like that, whatever that big presenting problem was, but just more to like maintain
Yeah.
wellness.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have managed to lose my notes again.
Well, as you're looking for, I can kind of
Yeah.
transition. So one of the things we wanted to talk about was, let's say, and again, it's beginning of the year, so that's also why we selected this topic. It might be a time for people focusing on their wellness goals, where that question, should I start therapy or should I look more into it? And so let's say you make that decision, or you find that it's time you want to talk to somebody, what might that first intake session look like?
Yeah.
And so typically for an intake, you are going in and just having most of therapy is a conversation, but you go in and you have an initial conversation with the counselor, therapist, clinician. And I compare it kind of to an interview style because we are going to ask a lot of questions out of curiosity of who you are, right? What has led you to where you are, who's in your life, things you like to do. That's a question I like to focus on as well. Like outside of maybe the stressors, what do you like to do in your free time? Um, and just getting a broad picture. And in that, we're able as clinicians to gain maybe some understanding or some context as to why something might consistently be coming up, or where maybe there are certain blind spots. Um, but it's really just to get to know you and vice versa, that you can get to know the clinician. What is the vibe? What is um, their listening style, their communication style, what their framework is, because every clinician has a different approach to therapy as well. So it's just a getting to know you session, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, I'll ask questions like kind of what do you do, but what brings you in? Kind of what are your goals for therapy? Tell me about your family. Tell me about your job. I definitely want to see pictures of your pets. Um, and then sometimes I'll ask maybe harder questions, but I always tell my clients that they're always free to not answer in the first
Mhm.
session. But
Mhm.
I'll ask about maybe like a little bit of a trauma history, schooling history, um, mental illness history, like familial mental illness. Um, and then I like to give at the end of my session kind of a very, always caveat it, but I always like to just say like, hey, these are the things I'm noticing, and this is the way I think we can get to your goal. And I'll do a very loose, we call it a treatment plan, but just like whatever I think the plan might be for us moving forward. I want clients to feel like, hey, whatever they came in with is not too big for the therapeutic process.
Mhm.
And so having a loose plan that will change as other things come up. But and that's kind of how I end session. So what happens if you do this intake and you're like, this is not the vibe?
Mhm.
Um, what do we do if that's the case? How can we make sure that we're picking therapists that maybe feel better? Maybe talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, like any first time meeting somebody, there is going to be a trust building process, right? And for some people, it takes time. For some people, they need that immediate click.
Mhm.
And so, if you are trying to assess how do I determine if outside of vibe, that's important, right?
Yeah,
Like our gut feeling is very
it matters.
it matters, it's significant. And also, if you're like, well, I might feel this way, but I also just would like to know how to determine if it's a good fit for me. There's always, there should be, right? If you are with a clinician who is, doing the work and being person-centered, there is space for you to ask questions to them, such as, um, what are your, I more so, what do you like to use in therapy? Like, are you more of a like a talk therapy? Are you more creative based? Like, what strategies or techniques do you to tend to incorporate in session? You can ask them what their specific um
Like feelings.
areas of, yeah, like areas of, because everybody kind of has a like a special interest or has like an area where they have just a little bit more experience on. And so if you want to know, is my clinician trained in doing trauma work? Are they more like like eating disorder related or mood disorder? What is their personal experience? Would they be comfortable if you have something that maybe they haven't worked with before? um what training do they have? You can always ask, what training do you have? If you I know with Cannenta we talk about offering services in English, Spanish, or Spanglish, right? And
Mhm.
asking, can I, can we do sessions in a language that I'm comfortable in? How flexible are we in how we're running the session? um what other questions, Hilda? I'm like,
I would ask about, especially if they advertise that they are like religious,
mhm,
like asking about how that shows up in session.
mhm.
I think on my bio it lists that I'm a Christian counselor, or at least that's the word on the street. I don't remember that being, but I have clients that come in and maybe they read my bio, and I have like, I mean, I do have like church work experience and all that stuff,
Mhm,
and I do love
mhm,
Jesus.
mhm,
And so even asking about how that plays into the like the counseling therapeutic process,
mhm,
um, can be really important because some people do want like more religious based uh, counseling, and others might practice but they're not really looking for that. So asking the therapist if they any religion that they might list, what
Mhm.
how important that is to the conversation for you. Um, trying to think what else. Even I would say like even just like how they talk about boundaries is really important.
Mhm.
So, if your therapist is like, well, let me just get your number, my phone, and I'll text you, I'd be like, that's probably a red flag. Um, so even though it is a relationship, it's a professional relationship, and and so we have ethics and boundaries that we have to keep. And so when those start to get really gray, that's usually a pink or
Yeah.
red flag
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, we should not be getting a friend request online
Yeah.
from your therapist. I
Yeah.
know some, like you gave a good example around communication. Some have maybe like a business phone that's just for like appointments, but that should be very clear of
Yeah.
when and how is this phone number going to be used,
Yeah.
just so that everybody's on the same page when it comes to communication outside of the therapy room
Yeah. Yeah.
for both
Yeah.
both boundaries. Mhm.
I would also ask about their value system. For some people, that's more important than others, but um, I think that I don't want to get too deep into this, but just asking like, if you're going in for gender affirming care, just making sure that your therapist uh, aligns with that, right?
Mhm,
We
mhm.
work really hard to not show our bias, but our bias does show up. And so it's
Yeah,
really important to ask about
yeah.
um, that kind
Mhm.
of stuff. And I think to go off of that, I would also say that sometimes it takes a couple tries before you find the right person, and that's okay. And I know
Mhm.
that that's a lot of work, so I want to honor that, but we don't get our feelings hurt. Like if I have a client come in and they're like, "Yeah, this is not a good fit." I'm like, "Good for you. Let me help you find someone who is a good
Yeah.
fit."
Mhm.
Because typically my experience has been if it's not a good fit for you, it's probably not a good fit for me either.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so if you're not clicking with me, if it's not feeling right, we're not going to be able to move very far.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is it, you you are allowed to change your mind
Mhm.
and you don't have to commit after that intake. It is a relationship. So you're not just going to get in the first one because maybe that's what's available. It is also an empowering process of, okay, I can have agency in choosing who am I opening up about really personal things with.
Yeah,
Can I trust this person? Do I
absolutely.
feel, you know, safe?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, the other thing I would say is a really important thing to look for when we're looking for a therapist is finding a therapist that has training in what I am uh looking like what I'm dealing
Hmm.
with.
Hmm.
And so if you and sometimes you don't know. So like if you're very first starting therapy and you're like, I don't even know what's going on, I think that's right. Like that's fine. Like you do your best. But if you know, like, hey, I have trauma. Hey, I am struggling with maybe what might be OCD behaviors. Hey, um, I was diagnosed bipolar, or you're gonna want to find a therapist that lists that on their website or their Psychology Today profile because a lot of times there is specialized training for those things, and you want to have someone who knows what they're doing because we never ever want to re-traumatize a client
Yeah.
because we don't know
Yeah.
what we're doing.
Hmm.
Um, and so
Hmm.
I think Elizabeth and we're both trauma therapists. I don't know if you have any other um, specialty, but like that, I list that on my website pretty clearly.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I list that. I think just general, life transitions, family, systems, stress, burnout, those sort of things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we're gonna change. We're gonna keep talking about the therapy process, but we're gonna change it just a little bit and do more of a kind of Q&A. So Elizabeth and I will take turns asking each other these questions, and these are kind of like the questions that we think we get quite a bit. Um, and so we'll kind of add to the conversation through there. I think sometimes for even for us we forget about what it's like to be in therapy for the first time because we're so
Mhm.
in it all the time. So
Mhm.
this we're going to transition a little bit. And so I don't know, Elizabeth, if you want to go be the first person to ask or answer.
I can ask you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Let's do it.
Okay, so Hilda, do I need to be in crisis to go to therapy?
You do not. You do not. I want to caveat with this. If you're having suicidal thoughts or homicidal thoughts, you need to go straight to an ER to help manage that or text a crisis line. But I will say that if you're having active suicidal thoughts, meaning that there's a plan forming, that's going to
Mhm.
be an automatic referral to a hospital system.
Mhm.
But a lot of people come in because there is some sort of crisis, but you don't have to be in crisis. You can come in just for a check-in. You can come in. I have had a couple people come in just to be like, hey, I just want to check in, make sure all my gears are working, and get like a second party or third party opinion on this, and then kind of see where we go from there. So no, you do not have to be in crisis to go to therapy. Elizabeth, how long do I need to be in therapy for?
Yeah. So I feel like this goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the short term versus long term, where it's a conversation that you're having with your clinician and yourself too, right? There's so many factors that go into that. But if you're going in for maybe like a single issue, again, maybe you're trying to decide do I leave this job or not? And
Mhm.
that's just kind of what's been you've been ruminating on. It can be resolved or approached with something called solution focused brief therapy, which can be a little bit shorter, if you feel like maybe 4 to 6 sessions, that's enough for you at that time. Or just to stabilize. Maybe you've just really been anxious and having some coping skills in your toolbox. After, again, 4 to 6 sessions, you feel, okay, I think I'm equipped to move forward on my own, take the training wheels off. But for some people, they might opt for longer term for different reasons. Maybe, again, addressing some unresolved trauma from early childhood or just complex trauma. And that just takes time that's the nature of it. It's going to take some time. And you can always pause and come back later. Um, but it really is just a conversation that you're having with your clinician to decide what would be in your best interest at that time.
Yeah. Okay. I do want to add that I have seen my therapist for a long time, and a big part of that is because of my work. I need someplace safe to go
Mm-hmm.
talk about things.
Mm-hmm.
So I will probably see her in off and on, probably for the rest of, as long as she's in business.
Yeah.
I will see her to just help sometimes process with some of the stuff that comes through my room.
I always think about like who's like the head therapist because I think of us as like Easter eggs,
Yeah,
like
who's the
who's
great
my
grand?
yeah, who's my great grand therapist?
Yeah, yeah, for real, for real. Uh,
So Hilda, is it true that everything is confidential in session?
yes. Well, yes, and so everything is confidential except for what we call limits of confidentiality, and so those are suicidal not thoughts, but suicidal plan, homicidal plan, active instance of child abuse, elderly abuse, an adult with a disability, and then if our records ever get subpoenaed by the court. And I always like to add that even if that were the case, we try to minimize um, how much is actually released. So if we can get by with a letter of treatment, we'll do that. If
Mhm.
we can just talk to the person, we'll do
Mhm.
that. And then the way we write our notes, we try to write them as enough information that we know what's going on, but not so much information that if that were to be the case, that your whole life is exposed. So I hardly ever use names in my notes. So if you're talking about your boyfriend Sam, Sam will not the name Sam won't necessarily be in my notes. It'll be like client's boyfriend. Um, but everything else stays in the room.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, oh, it's my turn. Um, um, does going to therapy mean I don't believe in Jesus?
Mm. No. No, no. So back to like conversations around what stigmas exist
Mhm,
based on different maybe belief or cultural systems. At times, you may hear, oh, just pray about it, or, just give it to Jesus, or, offer it up. And that obviously prayer and reflection and um leaning on, certain scripture passages, that's always helpful, if there's something that's instilling a
mhm,
sense of hope or strength or comfort, that is always helpful. And also, we can benefit from having a space where we're not looking at things through just our lens of maybe anxiety or fear, or even up for misinterpretation, right? Of if we're in a state of fight or flight, right, anxiety's kicking in, and I maybe I'm just like ruminating in prayer about it, it can be helpful to have somebody that's trained to give you a a clear path, some blueprint of what are some practical steps that you can do alongside your belief system or belief practices
mhm,
that's going to lead to that outcome that you're looking
mhm,
for, where you have both that spiritual health, that spiritual comfort, and also that clinical side of things. It's in the same way, if you go to a medical doctor, right, it's not that you don't believe in the healing powers of,
mhm,
Jesus, or, your beliefs, your religious beliefs. um you can also benefit from, I'm having this ailment and I know there is this um treatment that can also be helpful
mhm.
together, right? It's collaborating, they don't have to compete.
Yeah, that's so good. I went to seminary to get my degree. And so I had one of my professors, he was like, I would never go to a pastor to go get brain surgery.
Hmm.
I was like, yeah, actually, you're right. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
yep.
Yeah, yeah. It's all like healing work, right? It's healing work, or it's like one and the same mission, right? We see something that um we have training or we have insight in, and we can just help address that
Yep,
again
absolutely.
with our own. We each play a role. We each play a
Yeah.
role. Each figure, each um I'm gonna pause there.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, each figure or each member in the community has a role.
Mhm,
And so again, it's
mhm.
collaborative. It's collaborative.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a great way to put it. Um, I think it's your
Um,
turn. Your turn.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a good question. I've been to several therapists, several clinics.
Mhm,
Nothing's working.
mhm.
What's wrong with me, or what's going on?
Yeah. I think this is a really hard question because I think it can be really complicated. One of the things I'm a big believer in is that our bodies do not heal until they have capacity to heal. And it is very, very possible that we are forcing something that our body's not ready to deal with. I remember a long, long time ago, I had a client who they were just ready. They were ready and we're having all these conversations, but their nervous system was not ready. And so what would happen was is that we'd like dive in because they're ready and they're like pushing the issue and and then they would have a like a really big emotional response, which is fine and manageable, and it created too much vulnerability. So we would have to take like a couple weeks to pause to kind of regroup. So there, that could be part of it. The other thing is that for all the good therapists out there, there can also be there's quite a few not great therapists.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it can be possible that you've seen a couple therapists that just aren't good fits, or don't they don't just don't know. And I don't know what would like right the luck of the draw. But even in my case, before Lindsay, I had my first therapist, and then I tried two other therapists before I got to her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that could be it. I think sometimes too. We live in a culture that really puts a value on progress and moving forward and health. And some people really, like all of us, just have like really normal human things, and they don't have to be constantly pathologized, right? That doesn't, right? Like actually, you're supposed to be emotional because you have emotions, right?
Yeah.
And there's not like,
Mm-hmm.
there's no intervention that I'm going to give you that's going to get rid of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so I also think that there is still a lot to be discovered around mental health treatment. Like
Mm-hmm.
even some of the things that we use now have only come about in the last like 40 years, which is a really short time in the life of psychology. Um, and the other part of it too is like sometimes like people just need different modalities, and traditional talk therapy and access to some of that can be really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I think about like neurofeedback or biofeedback has really good results. But if you like Google that here in DFW, there's only like a handful of places that do it. And some
Mm-hmm.
of it don't aren't covered by insurance, or it's really expensive. So something that could be really helpful for someone, like access becomes really difficult.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't necessarily inherently think there's something wrong with you, but I think that there's a lot of factors that go into it that might be making it difficult to get where you're going.
Mm-hmm. I quickly want to add a couple things as well. So
Mhm,
there's a book written by a person living with complex PTSD, and it's called What My Bones Know.
mhm,
And it's autobiographical, and then also kind of educational, but she talks about the different modalities that she did. EMDR, she did IFS, she did one that I can't remember, it's like a relational one. And so she needed at different points needed different
mhm,
things because of the layers that she was working through.
mhm,
So, you know, don't don't feel like you have to stick with one thing the whole time. Like at times you have to adapt based on your needs. But then going back to what you said about valuing progress, I think also, um, I think I'll say myself, um, the the instant resolution
mhm,
or instant like relief, where okay, after one or two times I should be better, or I should, not feel this way anymore. And one it was like a talk that I heard one time. She compared therapy not to like healing anything, but almost like when you get braces, or when you're having a brace on your arm, where it's more about alignment versus healing. So it's going to be kind of painful at
mhm,
times, and it's not going to be the most comfortable, and it's not going to be from one day to the next.
mhm.
So also just kind of managing expectations around what do I think is going to happen
Yeah,
here.
absolutely. Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, we have maybe let's do the last two.
Okay.
Um, can you come to my graduation, wedding? Can I give you a gift?
Mm-hmm.
Can
Mm-hmm.
I, yeah, will you show up to my party?
Yeah. Um, this sounds similar to somebody who's like, "Can you be my best friend?"
Mhm,
And it's like, I would love to be your best friend, or I would love to be a guest at your
Mhm.
party, or I would love to be a part of your life in a more, personal way, but I love being your therapist, and part of what makes the therapeutic relationship work is I am almost like outside of what's going on in your day to day. It doesn't mean I don't want to celebrate you or cheer you on or I'm not proud of you. It's just this is like that um this is that third space that you come and we're talking about what's going on in your life, we're celebrating what's going on in your life, but to mix that would not be beneficial to that therapeutic relationship,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And then for gifts, that's I will say gifts is a good question because I understand people, especially around the holidays or, like appreciation days, for example, like social work month, those sort of things. People naturally are like, you've been helpful to me, here's something. And I feel there's a lot of different opinions on that. Personally, I really try to not accept anything. I-
That's a hard one.
it's a hard one.
Yeah.
So, uh,
Okay, I'll while you think about that, I'm gonna add to that
okay,
if that's
okay,
okay.
okay.
So LPC rules are I cannot accept a gift above $40.
Okay, okay.
Um, Pretty sure it's 40. There's like a limit. It might be
Mm-hmm,
50, but I can't
mm-hmm,
accept gifts above $50.
mm-hmm,
I will, if my client with the right intention, right, like brings me, I mean, I've been gifted a couple different things. I've been gifted a book. I've been
mm-hmm.
gifted one of
I've
my
been
clients,
gifted candy a
yeah,
lot.
yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm,
candy. I'm not going to say no.
mm-hmm,
Um, Now, with more complex clients, that question gets more complicated.
mm-hmm,
Um, but I think for those that we have, there's like a really like firm boundaries. We know that at this point, not accepting the gift would be disruptive to the relationship. I'm going to take the gift. But there are some times with some clients that have more complexity to their case where accepting a gift from them is not a good idea.
right.
And so that would be a place that I would, I mean, very graciously just be like, I can't accept this. And that might cause its own kind of ripples, but accepting the gift would be a little bit more complicated.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, and so yeah, so I don't know what it's like for LCSWs if you guys have a limit on the gift or psychologists, but LPCs
I
definitely do.
I would I would imagine it's similar. I've never accepted anything like that. Again, the most I've accepted is a box of chocolates.
Mhm.
I know someone like they crocheted a hat, and so also even that, like I know it took that time and effort. And so on one end it's like one of their hobbies, and the other it's just like I appreciate this. It was like appropriate in that it was a holiday season and those sort of things, but just like you said, being mindful of it not me receiving this is not going to mean anything that it shouldn't
Yeah,
mean.
yeah,
Just having those conversations.
yeah. If, I mean, as a client, if you're asking this question, you're probably in the right place. I
Yeah.
think I think that when we talk about like cases that are a little bit more complex, they're not asking this question
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah. They don't
Um,
maybe think to ask it
Yeah,
even. Mhm.
yeah. And so that's kind of what makes it different. So if you're asking the question, if this would be appropriate for your therapist, you're on the right track
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
And right, just being mindful that like there's things that we can't accept. Like
Yeah.
I would love $1,000, but I cannot accept a check for a thousand
I know
dollars.
someone who works as a teacher at a private school, and her like birthdays, Christmas,
Loaded up.
she's bawling, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Deserved, though. Teachers deserve that too.
Yeah, they do. They do. Dr. Leti, our founder, and I always have a running joke because her clients are very generous with her and they give her gifts. Like
Um,
she just got like a really cute mug for Christmas, and I laugh. I'm like, I never get gifts, which is not true. I do get some gifts, but not like she gets gifts. Like she gets a lot of
yeah.
gifts,
Oh.
and and so the other day I was like, I got invited to a client's wedding. I think I'm moving up. I think I'm like progressing towards, but yeah, it's we don't expect gifts. Like you guys don't have to give us anything.
No, 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 no.
So I have gifted my therapist some books, um, but nothing more than that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I'll ask this last one, but we can both
Okay.
answer it. As a therapist, are you always analyzing people? Like, is that a thing? Are we really doing that?
Yes, of course. I'm just kidding. Um, in session, so it's obviously different in session versus out of session. So in session, um, yes, but not in the way that maybe we're not like I think of the Terminator, right? There's like all these like light detections
Yeah,
and all these things where I'm pretending to listen, but I'm doing this other thing. No, like I don't know, especially if it's one of the first sessions. Like I don't know you, literally don't know you. I'm
yep.
trying to understand more about you. And so it's really just curiosity at first. It's just kind of noticing. As we do work together, there might be again just noticing certain body
Mm-hmm.
language, mannerisms, um if there's a word or a phrase that you keep using and bringing that up to you a little bit later on. So it is an observational stance, but it's not meant to be, like you said, pathologizing of, oh, well, you did this, so that must mean this, or, oh, well, you're avoiding this, that must mean that. It's being curious together and
Yeah.
see like an example be I noticed that you keep saying I should have this, I should have that. Where is that expectation coming from, right? So there's more curiosity and it's I don't have the answer for that. I genuinely want to know like where is that should have coming from. So
Yeah.
observational and curious. Outside of session, I I mean,
Tell
we
us the
make
truth.
assumptions. I think we can all make assumptions at times of people. Um, you know, there is that part of me, right, where I have certain training or I have certain like experience, and I'm like, huh, interesting. I'll just
Yeah.
interesting. But again, it's different.
Yeah.
I don't have a crystal ball into anybody's brain, so
Yeah.
anything would just kind of be an assumption. But
Yeah.
um, no.
Yeah. Yeah. I what I tell people is like, or like if someone's like, are you analyzing me right now? I'm always like, no, because you're not paying me my hour.
Exactly. I'm off the clock.
I'm off the clock. But I think to your point, I think one of the things that we can acknowledge is that we do get a set of training and we do view the world in a certain kind of way, and that sometimes can be hard to not see those things. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to do anything about it or think about it further or whatnot. The best way I know how to describe this, because this was a topic of conversation in my marriage around where my husband's like, you're
Mm,
therapizing me right now. And sometimes I don't realize, sometimes I do.
mm.
I'll own up to that. But the way I best know how to explain it is like if you're a musician and you're ear trained, you'll
Mm,
hear
mm.
like when someone misses a note, right? And you can't like just turn that off. But it doesn't mean that like as the musician you're going to go up to stage and tell them like, hey, you missed this note, you need to do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
But you can't necessarily just turn that feature off in your brain because you've already
Mhm.
had the training and view
Mhm.
this world through the certain kind of lens. And so I would say being a therapist is really similar. Is
That's such
that
a good comparison.
like
Mhm.
I can hear things and I can see things, maybe others don't, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to do anything further with it
Right.
or that I'm even doing that with my friends. Like,
Yeah.
and I know that I personally hold really firm boundaries around myself around some
Yeah.
of that. Is that if I
Yeah.
do hear something that feels like a little bit off or like I'm like, okay, this is not my this is just my friend. I'm just here to listen and
Yeah.
chat and have a good
Yeah.
time, and I don't need
Right.
to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hey, what a good conversation.
Yes. I know there was others. There's so many questions, and if in the comments and once we post it,
Mhm.
anybody has more questions, definitely comment them because I know there's so much curiosity around it. I think the conversation around therapy is more popular, but there's certain questions I know at times can be like, is it okay to ask this? Or I wonder how this, works.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're going to wrap up this episode. We're so glad you guys joined us. If you are in need of counseling services, please visit us at our website, cannentacenter.com. And we take all major insurances. And then through our foundation, cannentafoundation.org, we do have low cost services if you're in need of a bilingual therapist. And so we would love to check for you to check it out. I think that Palafox, you're still accepting new clients?
Yes, yes, I am. I still have a few openings. So please reach out if this conversation made you curious enough and wanting to make that step. Yes, reach out and schedule your intake with me.
Yes, yes. Well, we hope to see you at our next one. Thanks, guys.